But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright.
Good evening, welcome along to a live NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is the professionals with Stu Penman and Neil Mitchell. How are you, lads?
Very good.
And here it is, this England-Scotland game, Scotland-England game, because it is in Scotland. It is ready to take place tonight. We'll come on to that at some point, I'm sure, before the end of the show. It is live. We've had a few pre-records because obviously I've been in London. I've had 2 film premieres down there, which have both gone very well. And if you want to buy the films, get yourself on Amazon. I'm sure you know what they're all about and where you can find them. Okay. What I wanted to talk about tonight, because we have been discussing it in the WhatsApp group, we've seen various videos from other YouTube channels, is the thing I discussed a little bit on the Amigos and with Ben Jacobs, which was the meeting that was going to take place in Newcastle last week with the fans against sports washing. We know that there's some Newcastle fans who want some, at least some open discussion, and they held a meeting at the Northern Stage and also held a protest outside St James's Park for one of the Saudi internationals. Now, we've all probably seen some coverage of this on social media, and at least you've watched it on other YouTube channels. We all have our opinions and thoughts, I guess, on that. But I know Mitch and Stu, who we'll start with, because they live in those countries, those kind of countries, the countries which are connected to Saudi Arabia, they've got a more hands-on feel about it. So, Stu, over to you. Tell us what you think about what you saw, what's happened, and where we'll go from here with this kind of thing.
Well, I'll give my opinion, and I stress it's my opinion from knowledge I've got from living here for a decade and from doing my own research about, shall we say, current events, etc. So I do have to stress it's my own opinion, but the leader of the group of this Newcastle United fight against sports washing or whatever it is, Mr. John Hurd, I would describe him as an extreme socialist who used to earn his living in Saudi Arabia. Now, whether that experience has left him bitter, only he can answer that. His actions to me suggest yes. I'd suggest he isn't privy to the huge improvements over the last decade that country has taken. Now, before I carry on, this is not a defense of human rights in Saudi Arabia, because personally I find some of the actions in recent years as abhorrent and I'm uncomfortable with it. But that doesn't mean progress isn't taking place. My stance, and I know that Mitch and myself have said this on several occasions, is generational changes are happening like that. And we're talking probably 2 or 3 generations change in that last decade. And it's been phenomenal. It doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean everything that they do, I will say is perfectly right. But at the same time, if something's going wrong and someone's trying to do better, then that should be applauded. But what we shouldn't do is bend down to this woke society where everyone gets upset about things that have got nothing to do with them, and they go over the top with, oh, that's wrong. Everything seems to be wrong. There's a pile-on. It happened with the videos, and those who want to call people out because they sit in their glass house perfectly well and fully protected. Right. So let's get back down to it. Does this John guy have a right to protest peacefully? Yes, of course he does. Absolutely has the right to protest. Do Doyle's video in it have a right to do a video? Yes, they do. Doesn't mean I agree with either of them, but they both got the right to do that. But you know what? I don't care what he says. I don't care what they do. I care about supporting Newcastle United. And what I can't get on board with this sports washing group, shall we say, but you call it a group when I think it was like a geography teachers convention, wasn't it? It was about 4 or 5 of them. But if that's the group, that's their right. That's their right to protest, and they're upset about it. Fine. Do not attach yourself as Newcastle United supporters when you're not. You don't speak for Newcastle United supporters, and even if you do, let's say there was 6 of them. I'll give them a benefit of the doubt. There was 6 of them. and I would guess minimum there's 600,000 Newcastle United supporters. To do the math, it's 0.0001% of Newcastle supporters that are unhappy. It's not right to give them a platform, and basically they'll be delighted with the exposure it's got. But by saying that you're Newcastle fans when it's quite clear you're not, and there's no proof, there's no trace that any of them support Newcastle United, that's wrong. If they want to be unhappy about what happens, go to the government, go to Downing Street, stop buying peril, all the usual things, but leave this out of it. What we've got is, to me, it's born out of jealousy, and people need to separate politics from sport. Yes, we've got owners who have, shall we say, questionable pasts. Not the owners themselves, because the PAF is basically an investment vehicle. So if you look at that, what they're doing is buying around the world and doing things the right way. They're generating additional revenue, sustainable long-term revenue for the country. That's what the PAF does. They're not involved with any of the acts that Saudi Arabia have committed or been accused of. But to use Newcastle United, the best thing to do is just walk past and ignore them. And eventually it'll go away because they're not getting listened to. And yes, you'll have woke journalists that'll attach themselves to it. Some, I would say one, maybe two for personal reasons. And I will probably state, if I have to be careful how I word this, for their own sexuality. I can understand why they've got opinions against Saudi Arabia and they're attached to it. Others, as in the majority, are attached themselves to this for clicks. And that's not right. That's not proper journalism, and that's not fair. So, yes, and I'll mention Adam, because Adam just videoed questions that were being asked. He didn't make a statement. He never said so. I'll defend him to that point. He just showed things. Yes, then people would have played up for the cameras and showed how uneducated they were. That's not really anyone's fault apart from the schools that they went to. Now, I don't think they could have dreamt of better publicity. But where it falls down to me is they're not Newcastle fans. Stop claiming to be Newcastle fans and stop claiming to speak on behalf of Newcastle fans. I think the surge in revenue being generated since the takeover happened shows that the vast majority of fans are supportive of the takeover and the people who own us. Whether the country's different, but when you sign up to support a team, you don't sign up to support politics or people who may buy you in the future. So I can sit on here, and I've said it many times there, Steve, that I've been to Saudi probably 30 times in the last decade. And I would say possibly more than that. And from visit 1 to visit 30, it's unrecognisable. And I know Mitch has been a couple of times, but from his first visit to the visit that him and Mr. Hasty had, plus a few others last year, unrecognisable. And that should be applauded, that should be supported. It shouldn't be, oh, well, this happened in Yemen. What's that got to do with Newcastle United? Seriously, what's that got to do with a supporter walking past? But to engage with it, to video it, to publicise it, that's their choice. Doesn't mean it's the right choice, but that was their choice. But for me, education creates knowledge, and that's how to improve things. If the people aren't educated, then it's very easy to jump on the bandwagon and start criticising people. Steve, you're a victim of it yourself. Yeah. I've been a victim of it on a much lesser scale. Mitch has been a victim of it where, especially on social media, you get a pile on for having an opinion. But everyone will say their opinion's right. And I know that because I know my opinion's always right. But everyone will say that, my opinion's right. But it doesn't mean that a person doesn't have the right to have an opinion. And if you want to discuss it in an adult way, in an educated way, and listen to the person's point of view, then fantastic. You can do that. But then you have people who are then saying you can't do this and you can't do that. You shouldn't do this, and look what they've done. They're judging from a wrong stance, and I just have to keep going back to the same points. The people who are running this shouldn't attach Newcastle United to their group. If they're anti-Saudi, be anti-Saudi. Sports washing, isn't that a good thing? Because the more that the PAF buy, the more spotlight gets put in Saudi Arabia, the more they're likely to change for the better. But who are we as a country, as an individual, as a group, to tell another country, another religious belief, what they should do because it doesn't suit us. If they started doing that with us, there'll be problems as well. So we need to be a bit more respectful and a bit more understanding, which takes us back to the education and knowledge part. But I thought it blew out of proportion at the weekend. Yes, there was proper, and I'll repeat the word, doilums getting videoed and probably staged, and it didn't shed us as Newcastle fans in good light as education-wise. But the point that they were trying to make, and I wouldn't say succinctly at all, was they're happy with Newcastle being owned by PAF simply because it gives us a better future. So if you strip it down, that's what we as Newcastle fans want, a better future for our club. And I'd ask you, any supporter of any club who doesn't want a better future for their club. So if sport washing is the way, the more the sport wash, the more they buy, the more they invest in other things, the more spotlight gets put on them, the more likely they are to change anyway. That's what we need to get behind. But most of all, what we should be doing is supporting on our team, Newcastle United. And if they want to stand at the next to the food bank and protest peacefully, let them do it. Just walk on by. Because if you get ignored, eventually you go away. But by highlighting it now, they would have been dramatically impressed. They couldn't have wished for something better to happen than what it did. But we learn from our lessons. So hopefully, if they're there for the next game, the game after, ignore them. Eventually they'll think it's pointless. Go down to Downing Street when Mohammed bin Salman's there, protest there. But make sure you don't put petrol in your car. You better start walking soon because he's going next month. So I just thought I'd get that little bit off my chest.
That's an official Stu Penman rant, a controlled rant, an educated rant, but a rant all the same. So well done, Stu. I thought that was, I think you got all your points across that you wanted to. And Mitch, the problem is when I get one of you on before the other one on a subject matter like this, the other one tends to steal the other one's thunder. Has he done that?
Yes.
In some ways, it's difficult to disagree with anything that Stu said. As people who've lived in this region and seen change across the whole region, not just in Saudi, in the time we've been over here, it's been phenomenal. Generational changes in a matter of years is quite right. And that's continuing and going to continue. With regards to the NUFC fans against Saudi, there's a number of issues I have there, and it revolves around credibility and authenticity. The two reasons I think why people enjoy this show: credibility and authenticity. We don't know how many of them are actually Newcastle fans, and even if you look at the account, the interactions tend to be with lots more fans of other clubs than just our own. I've got no doubt there are Newcastle fans who are very morally and politically strained in wanting to get that, it's saying where we're going with the backing of Saudi Arabian money, and I get that some people may have a conflict internally about that, and they're well within their right to protest. And the way to deal with that protest is to ignore them. By challenging them the way some people did, in a rather ignorant way, is embarrassing not just for the major fan base, but it also platforms them in a way that they couldn't hope for, and accelerates and gives them a bigger voice than they actually have. In terms of credibility, Stu's mentioned the individual that is named repeatedly, and whilst he seems very much against the way Saudi Arabia do things, and he's quick to point out how many people are on death row and how many executions there are in Saudi Arabia every year, he also lists on his personal Twitter account Trotsky as a personal hero. That would be the Trotsky who gassed 4,000 soldiers. That would be the Trotsky who was very much part of the Red Terror that executed people in Russia, a number of 28,000 people per year, I think between something like the years of 1917 and 1922. So when you come into this and someone seems as conflicted as that, it raises credibility issues for me. I guess we can all choose our own God, our own devil, and our own despot in that respect. But don't come telling a regime how they should go about doing things when you list somebody like that as a quote-unquote hero. That just doesn't sit with me at all. He seems to evade any hard questions, and nobody in the press seems to want to ask any decent questions. And that's always the way. It's an easy story. Why is it always Newcastle that gets the protest? It's an easy story. It's easy numbers. It's an easy thing to do. And we always have been and always will be, particularly by members of the press. And the press lap it up. Things like that, young idiot having a go in the way he did, and I choose my words carefully, just gives more power to the southern press to turn the thick Geordie card on again. You know, and I think we're far more educated than that as a fan base. I think we recognise we're in a very unique position. There's not many people in the UK have a voice, be that through fans organisations, fans groups, the forthcoming fans advisory board, for example, that they're putting together, that will give Newcastle United fans access to people within certain levels of Saudi society to feed back on every level about everything, not just about the football club. And so we're in a very privileged position in that respect. And whilst the UK has an ongoing relationship with Saudi Arabia that is deep and long, and it has an ongoing relationship with this region that is deep and long, why should we be any different? Why should we be treated different? And it comes back again that if you want to look for moral fibre and fortitude, I would suggest to anybody looking within football's the last fucking place you should look. Just look at Man United at the minute. And they're players who obviously seem to, dare I go as far to say there seems to be a dressing room culture there, and it's not a very nice culture. So if you're looking for morals, don't look at football. It's the last place to dig. People keep showing you that time and time again. Newcastle United fans can't just be the moral arbiters of sport. What about golf fans? What about tennis fans now? Now they're getting the young tournaments into Saudi. You know, there's so many other places you could go here, and yet it seems to be us every time because we're big news and we're good news. We make headlines. Quite right. Sticking cameras in people's faces and trying to point score just doesn't happen at all. Proper and fair discussion, yeah, I would love the opportunity to, but I don't think anybody will get the chance. And so I reiterate, the best way to deal with this is to recognise their right in the UK to protest, to have an opinion, to express that opinion, and ignore them.
Yeah. No, I think you both make valid points, and you know, especially about the YouTube culture of which we are part of. I think our shows certainly aim at a more mature audience, and that's no offense to some of you in the chat. I know some of you go, "What you on about, man? I'm only 41, 42." But you know, I think we've been there. We've been around the block a few times watching Newcastle United, and with that kind of support that we've given over the years comes a bit of experience in all different kinds of campaigns. This is a new one for me because normally it's something a bit more a bit more simple. But this is really engrossed in world politics, and I've just had the same mantra since takeover as I've got exactly the same now post takeover, and that is, who are we to judge? Ultimately, look at our history. Just go back in history and see what we were like. We colonized loads of different countries. Some of those countries are still under, our royalty, our king. Still is on notes and coins and in other countries. And that, for me, our history is not one which we can celebrate in many ways, in many cases. And you look at that and you've got to think, who are we to judge? People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. We were given the opportunity to change, and we've got to give Saudi Arabia an opportunity to change it by all intents and purposes. And I've not been to Saudi Arabia, but I do intend to go. I genuinely do not think that we should be the ones judging these people. And I agree. Those people who stood outside the ground deserve the chance to protest. They deserve the chance to have their opinion. And for me, this is something we're going to have to get used to. I don't think those people will go away, and they won't feel it. They won't feel it. They should. And I do think we'll have similar situations as we've had in the last few days. But I think with the YouTube stuff as well, I just think sometimes it comes down to inexperience as well, and people just wanting to get views and hits. This channel's not really about that. It's nice that we get good viewing figures, but some of these videos that I saw at the weekend, I just felt that they knew it was going to get a lot of exposure, and that was the reason they were stood outside there. Not because they had any political point to make, not because they wanted to listen to anybody's views about sport washing or have any sensible discussion with these people. And I just think it reflected badly on our fan base. With some of the people that were selected for interview. That's what happens, sadly.
Steve, I just say the people who were interviewed, were filmed, they've been vilified. They've been lambasted, they've been dragged over the coals, they've been named, they've been shamed. They've had the social media going through saying, look at this, what an embarrassment, look at this, what an embarrassment. But the same people are defending the other person's right for a speech. Well, that person's right for a speech as well. It just doesn't mean because it's not the most balanced argument or discussion he's putting across. He's entitled to do it. And for whatever reasons he's doing it, fine. Now, where do you draw the line? That person's doing it because he wants to be famous on TikTok or whatever. And he's come out with something that doesn't make sense, and it didn't really add up, and he looked like a proper ding, to be honest. Like, he looked like he was threatening an old man, which doesn't come across well in any country you're in. And any personal beliefs, it's not the right thing to do. But the other guy's still a fraud, saying he's a Newcastle fan, but he's not. So there's right and wrongs in both camps. But the way it's been blown up, and the people who are criticising, and I'm not defending the ones that were being videoed, but the people who are criticising them are double standard here. The hypocrisy's been massive. Oh, we shouldn't pick on this nice guy. He put a nice argument across. Okay, that one didn't. So what we'll do is we'll drag him across the coals, and what happens to the mental health issues there? Because the ones who are doing the pylons are the ones who cry mental health straight away as soon as it doesn't suit them. And that's the problem with it. If that person is wrong, that person is wrong. Two wrongs don't make it right. Now, I don't believe they should be protesting, in the way they're protesting by attaching themselves to the club. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't protest. But that doesn't mean I agree with the person who tried to, he made a mug of himself, for want of a better phrase. They're both wrong. But stop putting it out there and they'll go away like anything else. Now, I'm not saying put the what's its name, the human rights to bed, but that is not your job as a fan to be talking about human rights. Your job as a fan is to get inside the ground and support the club, or if you're from afar like me and Mitch, support them the best way you can. But if they were doing that with love of the club, then it backfired on them. That's their fault. Hopefully they'll learn and they'll grow from it. The young, immature, we've all made mistakes in our lives. Nobody's perfect. And I think we should just brush it under the carpet now and move on. And everyone learns from it. Ignore the protesters. If you don't agree with them, ignore them. If you do agree with them, stand next to them. That's it.
Yeah, good stuff. Quite diplomatic, says Andrew, with what you've had to say. But yeah, we like to just speak, speak our minds, but also just keep it on the level. Barry says Mitch and Stu, not football related, but fascinated with the line "City that Saudi are building in the desert." What do you know about that? It's incredible.
Neom.
No, there's the line as well, which is it's attached. It'll be attached to Neom, and the idea is it's a long, thin, walled city that'll be carbon neutral and self-sustainable and
greenest city in the world.
Whether like many projects, big projects that are set off here in the Middle East, that ever gets completed. Don't know, because there's a lot of projects get shelved or they turn left and go on to do something else out here. But it just shows the level of ambition that they're trying to work at. the whole Neom and the Red Sea resorts that are being looked at, talking about building a ski resort in Saudi Arabia. They are very ambitious and they set themselves very high bars.
Yeah, they certainly do. Got a couple of questions coming in. We've got 2 or 3 minutes before we go to the ads, so I don't want to pick one that's going to take a long time to answer. But we'll go with this one from Scofina.
That'll take ages to answer.
It won't, because you can just say we're not very impressed.
Well, I'll answer it by saying, ask Mitch, and then that's me.
Right. I'll come back.
Talking about this non-stop with Steve.
I'm going to come back to that one in the second half.
Not 2 days, 2 weeks.
I will come back to that one in the second half. Let's answer this one, which shouldn't take too long. This is from Rich Joblin. He says, slightly off-piste. I'm a chartered building surveyor. Are there opportunities in the Middle East for my profession? Do you know?
Yeah.
In a word, yeah.
They're constantly building and developing, so yes, of course there is.
Right, there you go. So that didn't take too long, did it? Into the ads, so Stu could get his tea before the match.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at skipsandbins.com or telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Big thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces handmade in Cumbria. You can order them from their website, mrvickys.co.uk, or by telephoning 01768 210 102. A big thanks also to New Workwear. You can find them at newworkwear.com. They're an agile and dedicated workwear provider. Welcome back as well to United Travel. They are a UK coaches firm and they are based in the Northeast. They've got 2024 tours and you can contact them on 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Email info@unitedgrouptravel.com and they've got a website which is unitedgrouptravel.com. There's no strangers on their tours, just people you haven't met yet. Big thanks to them for their sponsorship. Big thanks as well to Media Arts, and they supply all the video technology. If you want to become a member and get a cup, a pen, a membership card, and a scarf, then get your smartphone and put it over this QR code. It will take you straight to the membership pack. It's a £25 one-off fee. You can also go to NUFC Matters website and search membership pack to book today. If you want to help the channel, then subscribe to it by hitting the subscribe button. Hit the thumb up under the video to like the video and click share to share to your other social media. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. Don't forget, we help the food bank on this channel. If you want to do so virtually, go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and make a donation today. The Alan Shearer raffle is back on. 150 tickets, £1 a ticket. Win a limited edition signed Alan Shearer ball. Enter today at nufcmatters.com.
Okay, so the question I asked before the break was thoughts on the 7-7 group trying to acquire Everton. So, Mitch, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, they're an interesting group. They're an interesting group who make no bones about taking positions within vulnerable football clubs with the hope that they'll pick the football club up as a whole. They want to follow a multi-club model. And the challenge with multi-club models is people keeping up with it. The regulation of it, both within football regulation in terms of, say, the Premier League, etc., but also then across competitions within UEFA, and how things work and how things are measured. And so some of the issues that you've seen with, for example, Watford and Udinese making multiple transfers between each other for random amounts, and I think they've fallen foul of this a little bit. And it's a growing trend. 777 own bits or all of a number of clubs. However, they seem to be getting it wrong across the board, and there seems to be a lot of unrest at the clubs where they are invested. And I think I've tweeted a couple of times today about it, a couple of quotes from 777 saying about that strategy involving moving players between clubs, buying adjacent businesses such as ticketing and merchandise, and cross-selling products from other companies. That the vision for the group is that one day we're not just selling hot dogs and beers to customers, it's that we're selling insurance, financial services, or whatever. The intensity of fans' engagement with their clubs means they want to be monetized. So basically, you're talking about asset stripping and taking as much money off the fans in every way, shape, or form as you can. The other issue with the club, of course, or with 777, is one of the top guys there has a 2003 conviction for cocaine trafficking in the US. So they're a very interesting bunch, shall we say. I certainly, as a fan, would be terrified of 777 getting their claws into anything to do with my football club. They seem, with the clubs that they have, they seem to have asset stripped, moved players around to suit, to just balance books and make things work. But it's generally more about getting the hooks in the fan base and trying to sell associated products from associated companies. They've got holdings in things like aviation, litigation, finance, private credit. These are not great areas which, you know, they want to exploit the fans effectively. They've pretty much said that a fan's engagement with a club means they want to be monetized. And so, you know, are they going to be going to Everton fans and offering sort of Wonga style personal credit under the Everton badge? That would be, like I say, that would be shocking. But it wouldn't. I wouldn't put it past them, because they seem like they pretty much said that that's what they want to do.
Interesting. Then, could Everton's fans go through any more? It sounds like a perfect match, especially with this points deduction in October. What's your thoughts, Stu? Everton fans must be reeling about this if this goes through. By the way, I did like this message that we had in the chat. Where was it? I'll lose it if I don't mention it. Andrew goes, "I'm pleased it's 777, not 666, or would defo see the Christian protest this."
If I know that Mitch has mentioned stuff there, and I know Mr. Hastie's done a lot of research on this as well. So I would only be saying things that have already been said, or for me, this is something that should be covered on the Amigos and allow Steve to go into more depth, because I don't want to steal his thunder. But it's the hypocrisy as well. If you strip everything back, we've got owners who are willingly investing in the club, and not just the city but the region, and making it a better place, just as what happened at Manchester City. You know, the surrounding areas benefited from their takeover. Will this happen with Everton? Is there a lot more question marks to be asked about who the owners are there than ours? To me, yes. But I think this topic is probably best left for the Amigos. Well, definitely for Steve and Mitch to get their teeth into it in a bigger debate. I'd rather say that than come up with things that I know that we've said personally to each other, and it's not fair.
Have we been doing your head in with this for the last 2 weeks?
No, I've loved it. I've been busy and I've looked at it and I've done my own research, and hence the reason I've been chipping in and stuff like that. But I don't want to say something that, to me, that's been said by yourself or Steve, or you would give it more credence by giving it more weight with the substance that you could say to it. But to me, it's like, if there's a button that says owner alert in the Premier League headquarters, then they should be pressing it very quickly.
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody did ask a question here, and it's something which I only caught when I was away, about the mascot situation at Newcastle. And again, it's just another story there. What's the matter now?
No, I want to say, because we've never discussed this.
Oh, you haven't discussed it?
No, we haven't. No, but I'm laughing because I'd love to be that child who gets 1,500 quid a year pocket money. Like, that's what, 30 quid a week or something. That's not bad pocket money in the day. But
so there we go. I mean, basically the story was in the Chronicle. So a young Newcastle fan gave up his Christmas and birthday presents for a full year to fulfill his dream of being a mascot.
Wearing his brand new Newcastle shirt. That's fine. But he's given up everything. He's made sacrifices. He might have done Bob a job. He could have done anything to raise funds. But where was the promise? Where was the guarantee from the club? If you do this, we'll give you that. You know, so, but at the same time, and I've seen it again, the pylons, the vilifications of the parents. More the father is on there. So people with money can't have their kids as ball boys or mascots. You have to be poor. You have to be uneducated to get this. And again, it's people just jumping on the bandwagon, wanting to criticise people, basically for the sake of criticising people. Yes, the young lad shouldn't have been paraded, in my opinion, shouldn't have been paraded in front of the press. Yes, he shouldn't have been given false promises that if you save this, we give that. But I think anyone who's a parent would have said to a child, if you want something, you have to learn to save for it. We're not just going to give it to you. And I think as early as June or July, it was mentioned it was going to be balloted, so everyone got a chance. Not much of a chance, but everyone got a chance. I don't know why it's breaking news now in September that, you know, the young lad's not going to be a mascot, unless it's a cry for help to say, look, we've done this, let us have the mascot's job. But then that's just as bad as people who have cardboard placards saying, give me your shirt. You know what I mean? It's where does it stop? To me, it's an odd story that, again, people just jumped on from their ivory tower to just criticise. The young lad wants to be a mascot. We all wanted to be mascots. And I'm sorry for swearing at tea time, but tough shit. It's part of life. It's part of life's learning. You don't always get what you want, even if you try your really, really best for it. You don't get what you want, and you have to learn from it. But that doesn't mean he's not going to support Newcastle. And I don't think at any stage the club promised the young lad or the parents that if he saves this much, he'll get their job as a mascot for the day. That was the price it was last year, and I could understand being a parent. Okay, you want it? You really want to do that? Let's put your money away. And if the kid has put that much money away, he's now got the best part of 1,600 quid to do what he wants. Fair play to him. And there's a lot of adults that don't have 1,600 quid in the bank to be able to do what they want with it. Yes, it's a sad story, and I think it was portrayed wrong by the Chronicle, who wanted to do I nearly spoke Tagalog there, Philippine language, Kawawa story which just means feel sorry for me story. Look at me, look, I've done all this, I should get this, I should get that. And they don't get it. No one promised them it, and the kid's upset. That should have been kept in-house in a family, again, in my opinion.
Mitch, much ado about nothing, bit of a,
absolutely. And I mean, even I can know that the mascot situation was changing at the start of the season, living out here in Dubai and having no interest in being a mascot or sending someone in to be a mascot. It's a non-story. It's just a non-story. And I'm getting tired of this sort of woe is me on social media. Can I have something for nout? If it's a draw, to draw. Enter the draw and hopefully you'll get it. If it's changed from how you thought it was going to work, that's life. It changes. It's not like it was hidden. And it's very... It frustrates the life out of us, you know. Yeah, I can imagine. Somebody, get on, Muzzer. That'd be fantastic. Holding Shaw's hand. Trouble is, he'd never let go of it all the way through the first half, would you? I think there's a few.
Might help him. It's in just the first 20 minutes. So.
Aye. Brilliant. So yeah, it's just a non-story. I think that the Chronicles seem to be getting really
desperate
to come up with stories associated with Newcastle United and getting sort of clicks and what have you. I find the Chronicles website at the minute an absolute nightmare to use. It's On my phone in particular, if I click anything from the Cron, it's absolutely all over the place, and it just does nothing for me at all. It just turns me straight off. I just don't want to know.
Okay, change of direction. Barry Hogan says, I'm fed up of us being linked with Ivan Toney. Kid's attitude's wrong. Surely we should be looking for better than him. He doesn't fit House profile. What do you guys think? Well, Barry, I've got to be honest. If you remember a while back, I was quite keen on Ivan Toney. But then when it was revealed that he bet against Newcastle on numerous occasions, as part, which is the reason he's banned from football until next year. Obviously, he can start training again this month, but he's still banned from playing in the Premier League until 2024. I lost all interest in signing him. I don't think he'd fit. I don't think he'd fit Newcastle's team in the dressing room or on the pitch. Stu?
Well, let's call a spade a spade. If he was backing against Newcastle when he was betting against Newcastle, he would have made quite a bit of money, to be honest, because we lost most games. But let's just put a bit of light-hearted slant on it. But I swear to you, I suggested this to Mitch earlier in the year, that we could go for Toney. And there was a suggestion at the start, or even before the transfer window opened, when we knew he was going to get banned, could we put a bid in saying we'll take him on a lower fee, and that would get Wilson through to January, or even if Kane was leaving, could we get through to January before his ban expired? And it was something that I threw out there, and I won't answer on Mitch's behalf. He's sitting there, he can speak for himself what his response was. But we threw lots of names at each other, just put it in the mix and stuff like that. I wouldn't be against it, but at the same time, if he's not back till January, by the time he gets match fit, you're talking end of February. By the time he gets anyhow match fit, you're talking probably March, early April at the latest. And then you're going to have to stump up. I think their manager asked for 70 million. I think they would accept 50 or 60 if it was stone cold cash. But you know what you're getting. But would he fit into our style of play? He's a great player, don't get me wrong. But would he, the big hold-up man, look how Chris Wood got picked on and stuff like that. Yes, he's better than Chris Wood, and yes, he's an advancement on that, but that's not how we play. We play with pace and panache up front and quick thinking. He's a hold-up guy who scores a lot of penalties. We've got plenty of penalty takers. So for me, Toney, I can't see us buying him. At the start of the window, I thought, maybe it's a player we could get on the cheap, to help with the financial fair play investments, etc. But I think the club would have other targets rather than Ivan Toney. Again, nothing against him because he's a great player, but he just doesn't suit us. Where he would be good at would be somewhere like Man United.
Okay, Toney's had his chances, Andrew. Mitch, what do you think about this link with Toney?
The Ivan Toney that Brentford have is not the Ivan Toney we'd released, and I'll give him some kudos for developing as a player. He really has developed as a player, and he's proved he can score goals at the top flight. That's not the Ivan Toney we let go. So that journey has developed him, and he's been able to develop his game. However, Ivan Toney, the individual, who must have known what he was doing was wrong. It's not like it was a one-off. How many counts was it? 700 and something? He's lucky he's playing football in 2024. And that says a lot about the individual. And he's got to carry that now for the rest of his career. He certainly doesn't take the no dickheads policy. I think that's for sure. And I just can't see, and I think Stu's point is a very valid one. You'll be fit by when? You'll be Eddie Howe fit by when? And so we're not buying him for the end of the season. You're effectively buying him for next season. And I think there's better value out there. I think there's better ways to spend 50 or 60 million pound. And you let him go on his way. I gather he's already been flapping his chops and here and there saying about what he wants to do after he leaves Brentford. Well, mate, you're still a Brentford player. Whether you're allowed to play for them or not is another matter. And again, that just reflects on the individual. Doesn't come across very well. It doesn't behoove him well at all. So, no, not for me. But as a player, yeah. I mean, just the player that can score Premier League goals in the way he has, no doubt you'd take a player like that any day of the week. But combined with the individual, no thanks. I'm sure we can spend the money better.
Okay, good evening, Dougie. Good to see you in the chat, mate. Good to see everybody in the chat after having a few days off. And I know you guys like the live shows, so it's great to be back live and taking your questions. And welcome to Bill Preston, who's certainly causing a bit of a stir. I'm keeping my eye on you, mate. David McLeod says, I've seen a few things about St. James's Park naming rights going to Adidas. Have you guys heard anything? Yeah, but I mean, we saw that interesting share go, and I'm not talking about the singer or Fabian share. I'm talking about that share that was sold or exchanged for £60 million. Lots of speculation as to whether that could have been for the Adidas. Was that the Adidas deal? Was this something else? None of us know. But yeah, I mean, the naming rights. Do you think Adidas will be part of that, or do you think that's going to be something separate?
The deal that they talk about, they haven't talked about any specifics. If you listen to the voiceover that she read does on the documentary, he talks about striking a deal with Adidas that's worth hundreds of millions over a number of seasons. And it doesn't say it's exclusively about kit, which would suggest there's a maybe's more to it than that. Stadium naming rights or training ground naming rights or similar could indeed be sort of all rolled in with that. It wouldn't be unique. I think it wouldn't be. We've had an example of that at Bolton in the past, the Reebok. And so it's not a unique way to tie a deal in at all. Is it an inventive way to get more money out of Adidas? Yeah, probably. Because we've had to be inventive. We've said that all along, all about increasing revenue. Some of it will be straightforward and some of it will be inventive. And that's a very inventive way. And you know what? If it's Adidas St. James's Park, or Adidas at St. James's Park, or whatever like that, I don't think anybody would mind that. I think it's one of those ones which is genuinely quite an easy sell. Because the clamour to get 3 stripes back in Newcastle United from a lot of the fan base has been quite huge. I make no bones sitting here in an Adidas bloody polo shirt and in front of a cupboard with 30 pair of Adidas trainers in it. I know exactly where I stand on Adidas. I mean, mind that some of the designs recently for some of the teams, I think they've been bloody shocking, so be careful what we wish for. But as long as they don't do a Juventus and give away a half and a half or something mental like that, I'm quite sure we'll all be happy with a lot. But I think it wouldn't surprise me at all if those stadium naming rights bundled in with that.
Okay, we'll watch with interest. I'm sure we'll have some kind of answer to that at some point. Ticketing, I'm going to avoid like the plague. So anybody who asks me about ticketing, I'm sorry, but I'm not discussing it tonight. Neil Calvert says, question for tonight. Obviously, the Scotland-England game. Question for tonight. Trippier, Wilson, Anderson, undecided in England squad. Barnes now potentially wants to play for Scotland. As a Toon fan, who's cheering for? Glasgow's nearer. Neil, cheeky question that was Stu on the panel. But let's talk about this Anderson situation, Stu, because it looked as if he was going to go to Scotland. He's clearly having his head turned slightly by Southgate. I think most of us on here, when we've discussed it, think he should go to Scotland. I think Barnes should go to Scotland as well. I mean, they're the form team at the minute, but I think they'll get more games for Scotland, certainly. But yeah, what have you made of all of that, Willie won't he scenario?
At least we've got some good questions to answer instead of all this political rubbish.
Exactly. Right. Some football questions.
Yeah, exactly. Anderson, well, shall I say it diplomatically, my source within the Scotland camp, who's doing his very best Chris Tavernier impression of just batting things off, is very keen for Elliot Anderson to be capped by Scotland. Now, I think sometimes a lot of things can get read into it. If someone's got a niggle, you have to look at it from the player's perspective. He's on the brink of getting named in the Newcastle starting lineup, and that's his bread and butter. That's You know what I mean? He's a Wolves lad. He wants to play for Newcastle. And with injuries and a bit of misform from people in his position, you know, if he's firing on all cylinders, you've got players coming back from South America. He's got more than a sporting chance of starting for Newcastle on Saturday, which I'll be in Dubai with Mitch watching and a few others. He's got more than a sporting chance of starting. Now, if he starts playing for Newcastle, starts playing regularly, starts playing well, the caps will come anyway. So if he does have a slight strain, why would he want to go and risk it to get 10 minutes at the end of a game against Cyprus, which Scotland won, which is 5 out of 5 in Euro qualifiers? And if I get this right, if Norway don't beat Georgia tonight, Scotland will be the first team to qualify for the Euros next summer. Just thought I'd put that in there as well. And through no biased opinion. So yes, they really want them, but they do understand what you can't do is force the issue. Now, as much as he's got Scottish grandparents and it's an option for him, he's played for Scotland through the youth ranks. Of course, I think it's understandable that his preference would be to play for England. We had a chat in our Matters group where Spenny said that he couldn't play for... No, we're talking about Bonds. Couldn't play for Scotland, but he can. Even though he's been capped by England, you can have 3 caps. And I think it was Simon Jordan that pointed out... Oh, no, Martin O'Neill pointed out in TalkSport the other day. Declan Rice, the superhero for England, he played 3 times for the Republic of Ireland, but they were all in friendlies. So you've got to look to the player's individual needs and wants. If he comes to Scotland, I know he'd be very welcomed. I know personally he'd be very, very welcomed. And they could see him, it's not just an addition to the squad, but a benefit to the starting lineup because of the formation they play. Harvey Barnes, however, he's better player-wise, talent-wise than I would say 70% of the Scotland squad. But my opinion is I don't think he would start. And that's because of the formation Scotland play. We've talked about the play 3 at the back with my favourite Kieran Tierney at the left-hand side of it and Robertson in front of them. These two are 2 of Scotland's best players, if not their best players, and they've got that left side sewed up. So for Harvey Barnes to then play, you'd have to switch wings, which is an option there. There's so many permutations, but would he benefit the squad? Yes. Would he get game time? Yes. Is he likely to get picked for England? No. And even if they do just cap him, would he be like the Dion Dublin's one-cap wonder club? And that's got to be their fear as well. So to me, it goes down to the player. Do they want to be playing regular international football, or do they take the international breaks as that, an international break, and keep themselves fit for the club? Or do they sit and hope that Santa brings them the mascot's job at Newcastle United? You know what I mean? It's just like, what do you wait for? Sorry, I shouldn't have done that. It's just me being me. But what I will say is, if Scotland win tonight, I'll even turn the Christmas lights on the tree. That's me being Scottish and showing how excited I would be. And I'm only saying that because my missus is now in Dubai and she's arrived there now. So I've got the house to myself for a couple of days. I can keep the lights off, keep all Christmas off until at least Christmas, well, until at least Sunday when she gets back. But with Barnes, yes, I don't think, if you look at the way England are playing, especially in the Southgate, he's made it quite clear that Grealish is his preference in that role. That Rashford's the backup, and then this Foden, which for me is a worry because Foden to me is a proper, probably to me the best English talent there's been since Wayne Rooney. And the fact that England I'm not criticising England, it's an observation. When they played Ukraine the other night, they played Madison, who plays central or right. They played him on the left. Tells me that what we're saying is, Jack, that position is ready for you when you're fit again. We don't want to put Foden there because he might be a superstar and we can't drop him. You know, and that's something that's been pointed at several England managers in the past about playing favourites rather than the people in form. But regarding Anderson, yes, Scotland want him, and hopefully at the next window he'll get picked again and he'll be able to play, because he will be playing in the Euros next summer if he chooses Scotland. If he decides to try his luck with England, I really doubt we'll be playing in the Euros next summer. So that's up to him to decide. And whatever he chooses, I think we should support him.
Yeah. Mitch?
Yeah, I think for anybody making their mind up about what they want to do you want to advance through international caps and get a taste of international football as much as you can? Or do you go with England and know you're going to be in a bigger competitive pool of players, less likely to get a cap? I think it for a career pathway choice alone, it must be difficult. I know it will be, for Stu, it wouldn't even be a second thought about who he would play for. And that, I think, depends on what somebody brought up in Newcastle with Scottish heritage. Some people are brought up strongly with that Scottish heritage, some less so. And so then it becomes a sort of a heart-head decision about, well, do I feel English? Do I feel Scottish? I look at it as terms of a career pathway. Would I like Anderson and Barnes to be playing regular international football and coming back with more experience, and then Newcastle benefit from that? So I wouldn't mind either way, to be fair. Which way they want to go. I think the very interesting point made in the chat there about does playing for England increase their value more than playing for Scotland? I don't know. And but from a personal point of view, I think I'd like to have 2 young regular internationals in my squad, because I think that would improve them both in any way, shape or form. I don't think it would be a bad thing at all.
Okay, 1 minute left. Predictions then, Stu. Are you going for a Penman in the international fixture?
Probably. But who to? See, what worries me most, Steve, about this fixture today is the way England are most likely to play changes, because it seems to me that the Scotland manager picks the Scotland team, but it's the club managers that pick the England team, especially when it comes to friendlies. So the changes that will be made, it'll get away from a cautious midfield. That'll be altered. Rashford's likely to come in. Foden will probably most likely start. Henderson's going to be rested, I would say. Trippier's going to be played. You've got all of this, which to me would make England more dynamic and more dangerous, because they'll be more free than how they played the other night and how they grind through the results. But I'd love Scotland to win, and if they do, I'll be told it's only a friendly, and if Scotland get beat, I'll be told how wonderful England are and Scotland are rubbish, and at least Scotland are rubbish, and I need to get back in my box, etc., etc. Just like what happens when it happens to the rugby. But to me, it's a sellout crowd. There'll be a fantastic atmosphere, and what we should recognise is it's the oldest fixture in world football internationals, and it's 150 years old. So playing it every year, it was only the idiots that got it stopped. It's something that could get brought back into the calendar. They've proved this time it can be in the calendar, and it would be great to play home and away like alternate years. I'll be diplomatic and say a 2-2 draw. I'll go for the Desmond 2-2.
Gone for the Desmond. I'm going for 1-1. What about you, Mitch?
I can see a draw on it myself. The one thing Scotland have is something I don't see much in an England team at the moment, which is passion. And there should be plenty of that tonight in Hampden. If there's not, I'd worry about what's wrong with them. A draw.
A draw. Okay, we're going to pre-record Fans Forum now because I'm out tomorrow. So that will be on tomorrow, 6 till 7. Thursday will be Super Mac and Gibbo at 10 o'clock in the morning live. And then the Amigos is back live on Friday, and that will be at 5 p.m. Thanks to Stu. Thanks to Mitch. Enjoy the game tonight, lads. And I'll see you on Friday night, Mitch. Take care, everybody. And thanks, everybody.
Cheers, everyone.
See you soon.